Hello again. I spoke at some considerable length yesterday about the origins of the modern concept of anti-racism. Most viewers will have heard or read that it's not enough today to be non-racist and that we must all be anti-racist. This idea is presented as being axiomatic or self-evident, but it's nothing of the kind, really. It is actually a very strange notion, and I shall explain why. There are many undesirable things going on in modern society. One of these is racial prejudice. There are many others, things such as dishonesty, murder, lying, and 100 other activities which we would probably all rather did not exist. Racial prejudice is not the worst of these things. I think the sexual abuse or murder of children is far worse. But it is certainly the case that society would be better off without it. For all those other bad things that we witness, like stealing or domestic violence, say, it has always been considered enough that we simply abstain from them ourselves. In other words, the opposite of being dishonest is to be honest. The opposite of lying is telling the truth. Most ethical systems and religions merely require people to abstain from murder, theft, lying, and so on, and in that way an individual can be regarded as virtuous. Suppose, though, that I claim that it's not enough to be honest, that is to say, to refrain from dishonesty, but that we must all be actively anti-dishonesty and fight against theft, fraud, and embezzlement. I think people might look at me a little oddly if I suggest that. Why on earth should you have a duty to seek out and denounce or fight against dishonesty? We have a police force for that, don't we? Most of us would agree that this is going a little too far for the average person, fighting a personal crusade against theft, murder, and lying. We might view such a person as being at best a crank, at worst some kind of vigilante. And yet we are urged on to behave in this way with racial prejudice, and nobody ever seems to ask why it is not sufficient simply to abstain from racial prejudice in the way that we accept that we should avoid stealing or killing people. Racial prejudice is not the worst of the evils to beset this modern world. Terrorism and child abuse are, to many of us, far worse. I do not see it as my job to fight terrorism or child abuse, though. It is enough that I don't do those things. I think it's fair to say that this is the general attitude of most of us. I would like viewers to ask themselves how it came about that racial prejudice has come to be placed in a separate and distinct category in this way, and that it has become increasingly accepted that it's not enough simply to avoid displaying racial prejudice, but that we are said to have a duty to wage war against it, to be anti-racist, in other words. I have my own ideas on this matter, and I shall speak about them tomorrow. For now, I just want to draw people's attention to this very odd situation which they might not have noticed, that although the opposite to being dishonest is to be honest, the opposite to being racial prejudiced is apparently not just being not racially prejudiced, but it entails some kind of busybodying as well.